Happy New Year and welcome to another edition of the Five Star Zone. Rico Beard, Harold Sheldon from the Big Ten Network. Harold, let's just jump right into it. A lot of people, it was SEC, SEC, SEC. Well, we get to the semifinals of the college football playoff team, and lo and behold, there is an SEC team there. They weren't there last year, but they're there now. It's Texas. But the big boys of the SEC not there, but the Big Ten now has one but two teams in the playoffs. So many different ways we can go with this because one of the teams that we thought were going to be in the playoffs, not there anymore. Let's just go back to with the whole college football playoffs. What are your thoughts on just how this thing was structured? Did they get it right? Did they get it wrong? What should they fix?
So I like the actual format of having the champions get in. I hate the seeding of it. I hate that, the four highest champions all received a bye. Like, I don't think, and as we saw play out, it shouldn't be that way. Penn State was a double-digit favorite. Texas was a double-digit favorite over two teams that had byes. Like, that just shouldn't happen. And then you wind up having the number one team be an underdog against a team that they already beat earlier in the year. So I think if you just used the rankings 1 through 12, you would have had much better matchups, more fair matchups. You could have had Indiana versus Boise in your 8-9 game with the winner of that playing Oregon. That seems much more fair than 8 seed Ohio State playing Oregon or 3 seed Boise playing Penn State. If you just use the rankings 1 through 12 and did it that way, you would have had Ohio State, Arizona State in the first round. Winner plays Texas. Like, that seems way more fair than what we got.
Yeah, I look at the seating and I'm just like, guys, and I hope you're not going to be married to this. And it sounds like because they're going to be obtuse, they're going to continue this next year, even though, that's the dumb thing, man. I hate when you see a mistake, but you can't change it because of the networks. You mean to tell me the networks won't want better games and better matchups? The networks don't care so long as it's teams they're playing at the locations. They really got to step up. You're right. The fact that a group of 5 team got a bye, I'm sorry, that should just never happen. I would have even been willing to suspend Notre Dame and say I'd rather see them get a bye because they had that. Now, I understand you're punishing Notre Dame because they're not in the conference, but since we're doing these different rules, I would make it that, in the event, because Notre Dame normally plays a real schedule. Let's just be real about it. They normally play about 5 teams that they could lose to. If Notre Dame is ever undefeated or one loss, they should be eligible for one of those spots if you run into a situation like this. But yes, they definitely got to change this thing up. They definitely need to be able to do the reseeding, very similar to what they do in the NFL, where we're trying to get the best possible matchups and we're rewarding the good teams because the Oregon-Ohio State thing, Penn State to me got gifted a spot to the semifinals. Penn State, I think, is what Ohio State should have had they beat Michigan, and Penn State ended up getting it. So, yeah, a reseeding definitely needs to be done, but Penn State doesn't care. They're there. Ohio State had to go the more difficult route, but they're there as well. Oregon, real quick, what happened to Oregon?
I think you just faced a pissed off Ohio State team. I think Oregon tried to settle into the game after being off for a month, and Ohio State was ready to go from the jump. And once they jumped on them early and got that big lead, it was too late. Oregon kind of settled in the game, probably early to mid second quarter. But at that point, it's 31-0, 34-0. Like, game's over at that point. So I just think that we saw an Ohio State defense that was much different in this game than the first game. I thought that they put way more pressure on Dylan Gabriel the second time around, made them uncomfortable. I thought they tackled really well. Oregon killed them in yards after catch the first time. That didn't exist at all in the second game. And it seems like ever since that Oregon game, they've done some different things up front where they're not just going standard 4-man rush. They're doing twists and stunts and bringing a blitz and not just relying on talent to get there alone. They're actually scheming some stuff up. And since that game, that defense has been great. It's arguably been the best in the country.
Yeah, it's funny because if you'd have told me after they had just lost to Michigan again for the fourth time in a row that they would be the favorites to win the national title, I didn't see that coming. But here we are. The Buckeyes, the Ohio State Buckeyes. I mean, Jeremiah Smith is out there looking like, man, if he went into the draft right now, he would be a top 10 pick. I mean, this kid is phenomenal. And Big Ten fans, I'm sorry, but unless he transfers, you're going to have 2 more years of this. I mean, it's so exciting to watch him play. But for the Buckeyes, man, what happened from the end of that Michigan game to now? They can't be beat.
Yeah, I think that, and I think we talked about it earlier, where for whatever reason they get into this Michigan game, and we kind of saw it last year too when Ohio State played Notre Dame, and Ryan Day called out Lou Holtz, and it was the whole "we're a tough team." And it seems like for a year and a half they tried to just prove that they were so much tougher than people realized, and that it was some slight to them that they weren't as tough as other teams. And they tried to prove that, but they didn't have the horses that Michigan has up front to play that kind of game. And so they wanted to play, Ohio State should be playing on the perimeter because they have first-round receivers all over the place, and they have for the last 5-6 years. Michigan wants to play in a phone booth, and you willingly played them in their strength for the last 2 years. And so I wonder if they just say, you know what, that wasn't us. We're out of the Big Ten now. Let's just use our speed. Let's just use our talent. Kind of similar to what we talked about 2 years ago when they lost to Michigan and then they played Georgia and then nobody gave them a chance. And they're a Marvin Harrison injury away from winning that game. And so, it seemed like it's a similar blueprint now where it's like, okay, we lost that game. We got a bunch of upperclassmen, dudes who came back for this moment. Let's let it loose. Let's let our hair down and let's roll. And you see the results so far.
So how do they match up against this Texas team coming in? Quinn Ewers, Texas. I mean, if you told me this game was for the national title, I would say, okay, this is going to be a good game. But it's just for the semi. Meaning you got to win this game, and you still have to win one more 10 days later. What are we looking at in this game?
I mean, Arizona State should have beaten Texas.
Okay, I'm glad you said that. The referees, I'm sorry. If it's targeting in the first minute of the game, it's targeting in the last minute of the game. A man is laid out at the 50-yard line for the world to see, and they came back and said it was almost like they tried to Jedi mind trick us. You did not see a knocked out player. You did not see targeting.
Yeah, I don't know how that didn't get called. And if Arizona State had better field goal kicker or if they were better in the red zone, they certainly win that game. I thought Texas jumped on them early and then kind of cruised. And then it was like, oh, wait, they're not going away. And then all of a sudden you look up and it's a game. And they were 4th and 13 away from being out in the SEC, not having anybody to this point. So we know Quinn Ewers has been good. He's been solid, I should say. They can't run the ball right now, which is really surprising. The fact that Arizona State ran for 214 and Texas only ran for 53 yards gives me a lot of pause. I feel like Ohio State's defensive line should be able to get after Texas. If they play like they have the first 2 playoff games, then they should be able to win this pretty comfortably, I feel.
I mean, they got the Vegas betting odds not only to win this game, Harold, but they got them to win the whole thing so far. Let's go to Penn State. Penn State, look, some say they took advantage of just a bad playoff schedule, but here they are getting ready to take on a Notre Dame team that I think this is going to be the first big challenge for James Franklin and this Nittany Lion team since they played Ohio State, going up against, Marcus Freeman and this. I honestly like Notre Dame. I didn't think Notre Dame would be at this point right now, but they handled Georgia. I mean, they went out there and slayed the beast, and deservingly so. They're here right now. I think this game's going to be a lot closer. And really it boils down to can James Franklin shake off that small game James moniker and really step up and get this thing done? Because if you do, look, I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but man, could you imagine what all the pundits would say who scored SEC's the best if you had an all Big Ten national title game? Guys like Paul Feinbaum would probably go and take a vacation that week because they would have nothing to say. But when Penn State going up against Notre Dame, what do we see here?
Yeah, so the Big Ten final part I think is interesting, especially considering where the championship game is, Atlanta, where the SEC normally plays their championship game. So the fact that you could do that there would be very interesting. And we saw the inverse of that when the SEC – we had all SEC final in Indianapolis with Alabama, Georgia, and Big Ten fans weren't big fans of that and had to hear all about the SEC. So it'd be funny if the script was flipped for this. In terms of that game,
you're right.
Like it would be hilarious. It really would. But in terms of this game, they're very similar. This is a Spider-Man meme situation in terms of programs. We always view Notre Dame as, this historic program because of everything they've done. But before this Georgia game, they didn't really win a ton of big games either. If you look, like both teams have really struggled against these top 5 opponents. Penn State is 1-24 against top 5 teams since 2000, but Notre Dame's 4-22. So it's not like there's a lot of these, monster wins that have happened. Before the Georgia game, the last time they had beaten a top 5 team away from home was 30 years ago. So both of these teams, this could be a monumental win for both programs if they were able to get it. I see a complete rock fight. This seems like a first to 14 or 17 points kind,
really
that wins.
See, for me, I think can Notre Dame contain the tight end for Penn State? If
that's the matchup,
because they're going to move him everywhere. They're going to try to do everything with him, whether it's in the backfield, in the slot, going deep, heck, at the quarterback spot. I mean, he is the ultimate utility knife. And what can Notre Dame do to match up with that?
No, I think that's going to be the matchup, and I wouldn't be surprised if Xavier Watts, their All-American safety for Notre Dame, kind of follows him all over the field. Notre Dame plays more man coverage than any team in the country. So I'd be very, very surprised if you see Tyler Warren, kind of running in, finding spots in zone and stuff like that to get the ball. I feel like he's going to be covered by a very aggressive Notre Dame secondary, probably led by Watts. And to your point, they line him up all over the place. So I'd be curious to see, if he's in the Wildcat, how do they deal with that? If he's lined up a receiver, how do they deal with that? If he's lined up as an offensive lineman who's technically eligible because of a weird formation, like how do they deal with that? So, because we've seen all of that this year. And I think Drew Allers is going to have to take some shots elsewhere. Because I do think Warren's going to be great, and we saw him against Boise, and he had a couple touchdowns. But I want to see if some of those other receivers can win one-on-one because opportunities are going to be there. Indiana couldn't take advantage. Georgia couldn't take advantage. I mean, Penn State's receivers haven't been great, but, we saw one, Amari Evans caught like a 40-yard touchdown in the Fiesta Bowl. I feel like those shots are going to be there. Can Aller make them against a team that blitzes a lot? I think that's going to be key.
No, I mean, really it does. And then, for the Penn State defense, you're going to have to slow down. That mobile QB coming in there, that's going to be the big thing to me. How do you contain them? Because you're right. I look at this Penn State Notre Dame game, and I'm the first one to 20, I think, wins this game because I can see this one going either way. The Vegas odds pretty much say they could also see it going either way. Whoever gains the advantage, I think you're looking at a boat race where I don't think there's going to be a comeback. I think whoever jumps ahead, the defense will then tighten up and force you to panic and leave your normal game script and just play out of desperation. So I like this. These are going to be some fun games. I would do some major tweaking, but I like the playoffs. Now, what it did, and I knew it would do that, it pretty much made the other bowl games null and void. Nobody cared unless your team played in this game, or unless you had a relative or a friend, or you had money on the game. You just really didn't care, and then you got to wonder what a care factor is. Because my God, I mean, I'm sitting there watching the ReliaQuest Bowl, and I'm asking myself, had Alabama ever seen rain before? Because 5 minutes into the game, they had 3 turnovers. If Michigan had a potent offense, they would have been up 28-0. Alabama looked shell shocked. Like, you just see the different teams, and it's just like, man, the other bowl games. See, Harold, I have a solution. I know it'll never happen, but I have a solution to it. But because of the money factor, I don't think it's going to. One, you got to be 7-5. That's the new minimum. The 6-6 goes out the way. What is that going to do? It's going to reduce the amount of bowl games. So a lot of the smaller bowl games not going to like that either. The second thing, and a lot of the cities at these small bowl games, I don't see big crowds there. So it's not like the Chamber of Commerce is getting a ton of money. So what if, just bear with me, what if the Duke's Mayo Bowl teams up, and let's just say MSU next year makes it and they play the Duke's Mayo Bowl at Spartan Stadium? You could put your logo on the field. You could do whatever you want. You could plaster it everywhere. At least you'll have a crowd. At least you'll have, like, it'll be representative of something rather than just an empty stadium, because that's the downside of, if you don't make the playoffs, man, good luck trying to sell your team. Unless you're a team that, I mean, like, it's using MSU for an example, man, you haven't played in the bowl game in a while. You'll be excited for that next game. But I look at a team like Michigan, who just won a national title. Congratulations. You get to go play down in the ReliaQuest Bowl. Yay. I mean, I think there was more empty seats than it was Michigan and Alabama fans combined in that game. It's just going to be hard to get teams motivated to go play in these bowl games with the opt-outs and everything like that. Condense them. And then I kind of like how the first round of the playoffs went. You played them at home. Man, it was a fun atmosphere. What if they just took the regular bowl games and just sponsored them in other cities and just painted the field in the end zone and plastered your logo everywhere? I mean, because it ain't like large crowds are traveling to all of these, to El Paso and to all of these different cities.
No, I mean, I hadn't thought of it that way. I think that's certainly an interesting idea. I do wonder if for the Big Ten teams, when it's January and December, do the fans want to sit out there in the cold for a team that's 6-6, 7? Well, not 6-6, because your example is 7-5. So 7-5, 8-4. Would I guess Minnesota would. Would Michigan State fans, would they sit in a 10-degree weather to play, let's say, NC State or something in the Mayo Bowl? What do you think?
Probably not, but here's where you could also, I guess, make some changes and make it more regional. Whereas you hold the game during the week, you hold it at Ford Field, you hold it in Indianapolis, so it's close by, it's drivable, but you can still go and watch your team. So yeah, okay, a little bit of a tweak. It's not at Spartan Stadium, but heck, the Lions play it during the middle of the week, so you can change the field, change it back for the playoffs. I mean, they do it already for one of the bowl games. You can do it again and just play your game there at Ford Field or at Indianapolis, or I'm trying to think of wherever other places that got like dome stadiums where you can just go in there and play those games and stay warm. So Detroit and Indy will love it because they'll get a ton of people coming there.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And Indy knows how to host games. They know how to host big events. So that would be right up their alley for sure. I'm certainly intrigued by it because you're right. Seems like no one really cares about these other bowls. You know, the fact that the Duke's Mayo Bowl was, after the quarterfinals on a random Friday with nothing else going on, just seems like it was an odd placement. So yeah, I don't really know what the best solution is, but I do like your idea there. So I mean, they got to do something though.
Yeah, because they're trying to do the things new with the old ways, and it's like, guys, you got to let some of these old ways go. And yeah, but the tradition, man, tradition is just being held hostage by dead people. That's what tradition is. So It's tradition. The people who started this, most of them aren't around. All right, real quick, change sports. Somebody asked me this question, Harold. I thought it was a great question. Now, normally you hit me with some facts, but I want to hit you with this question because if you get this right, you could be a rich man right here, right now. In order from 1, 2, and 3. Who wins the Big Ten? Who comes in second? Who comes in third regular season in basketball?
Okay. I will go.
I had a hard time answering this question.
No, it's tough because I feel like there are 6 or 7 teams that could win it. So
just for an example, right now you have 10 teams that the worst record is 11-4.
Yep.
Overall record, not Big Ten, but overall record 11-4. And that team is Purdue, which is a team that you probably wouldn't think of. So go ahead.
Yeah, and they were the preseason favorite to win the league. So if I had to say right now, I would go Michigan State, Illinois, and Michigan. I would go with those 3.
Because I was having a hard time, but I had Michigan State, I had Purdue, and I had UCLA.
Okay.
Only because UCLA plays defense, and defense normally travels. So you don't have to have a great night. Like Illinois and Michigan, man, when their threes are falling, my God, you can't beat them. When their threes aren't falling, they're beatable. If you get Michigan in a close game, the lack of a real point guard hurts them. You get Illinois, can't hit a shot, man, they look horrible. Wisconsin, I mean, they set the record shooting threes. They're very streaky. They're an up and down team. Purdue, you take them out of Mackey, they're beatable. MSU, I think their strength may end up being their weaknesses. They don't have that go-to guy. They don't have that guy that, all right, that you knew Tyson Walker was going to go out there and make points. Right now, it could be any one of 6 or 7 people who could step up for them and get it done. I mean, honestly, I'm looking at this like I have no clue to pick the. You probably have a better chance of hitting the Powerball than to landing. To pick better chance of winning the Powerball than to get the top 6 in order in the Big Ten. I just don't think it's doable.
No, I agree. And I think there's going to be so much. The schedule is going to depend a lot on this because with it being 18 teams now, you only play 3 teams twice instead of 6. And I know for Michigan State, 2 of those are Illinois and Michigan. So you're going to probably play 2 of the top 4 or 5 teams in the conference twice. Your other one's Minnesota, so you do get a bit of a benefit there. But yeah, if there's a team, there's a contender whose 2 plays are a couple of the bottom teams and an average team, like that might be the difference in a close race like this. I do think that the Michigan State angle in terms of when it gets close late, like who do you go to? I think there's something to be said in strength in numbers in that you don't really know who to game plan for. Like I thought, especially in that Ohio State game, we saw it late. Fears made some plays. Akins had that drive to put them up 5. We saw it was Cohen Carr getting to the free throw line. So it seemed like there were multiple ways to get it done. And, we saw, and granted, it's different leadership and all of that, but we saw last 2-3 years, it was, hey, Tyson, go get us a bucket.
Right.
And everyone knows that's coming. So if they're loading up on that and he's taking a contested 2 and they stop it, they weren't getting another chance because they weren't a good rebounding team the last couple of years. And so everybody just kind of game planned for that and they knew what was coming. This year, it's like, well, it could just be whoever cuts to the rim and gets fouled. It could be off offensive rebound from Kohler. It could be, a driving kick from Fears to Holloman. There's so many different ways that Michigan State is able to beat people so far. But I think their consistency will allow them to win the league, even though I do think Illinois has a higher ceiling. I think Michigan probably has a higher ceiling too.
I'm trying to see who is Michigan. I see they got Michigan State, they got Rutgers. Who was their third team that they played twice?
Let me check. Because I really think that's going to determine, like with the league being as close as it is, I really think that the two plays are going to be what decides it. And so, like you said, I know there's Michigan State. Looks like
it's Rutgers,
and
I'm like, am I overlooking somebody? Maryland once, Illinois once, Indiana once.
It's not UCLA. Not Penn State.
They've already played Wisconsin. They already played Iowa. UCLA once. At UC
Purdue.
Oh, it's Purdue twice? Yep,
Purdue
it is. It's Purdue twice. So, okay. So they got Purdue twice, they got Rutgers twice, and they got Michigan State twice. So they didn't they drew the long straw. They didn't get the short straw.
Well, the good thing for them is Rutgers isn't what we thought they would be before the season. Before the season, that looked like that could have been a problem, but they got some issues right now.
Okay. Explain to me Nebraska and Nebraska basketball. Because when MSU played them, they beat the brakes off of them, and I was just like, well, that's not a good team. And they were like, no, they actually are. Was that just a bad day for them, but they're really a good team?
Yeah, I think that was a bad day. I really do. And I think it was a situation where Michigan State finally had some shots falling from three, and it just snowballed. Into the first half of that game, it was 6-8 point game. And then second half started, Michigan State got out running, and three started going, and it just went from 10 to 20 to 30, and there was just no stopping it at that point. Nebraska is really good defensively. They're 10th in the country in efficiency on that front. They do a good job of turning people over. They do a good job defending the three. I think that was just one of those outlier games where Michigan State had it all going. And, Michigan State, they're the best team in the country in transition. They score 28 points in transition. So if you're missing shots and they're getting the rebound and they're getting out and the crowd's into it and all that, it could just snowball really quickly.
All right, Harold. We'll be back talking more, I guess, if the two teams make it or one of the two teams make it to the national title. We'll talk that. This Big Ten hoop season, man, it's going to keep us busy because I'm going to keep asking you this question week after week.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's going to change week after week because, I think it may be a team that comes out of nowhere that gets hot at the end. Maybe Rutgers gets their stuff together and starts winning.
But like Maryland's got a ton of talent, but then they just go out and lose 2 in a row on the road to Washington and Oregon. And so, you just don't know.
I'm looking at this Big Ten, and I right now I couldn't tell you who's going to win this whole thing. But hey, Harold, what you got for me before we take off?
Well, I feel like it's fitting that they end it this way, with it being Penn State, Notre Dame, the fact that you have Marcus Freeman versus James Franklin, and the fact that the winner of that game, you will have a black coach play for the national title for the first time. And I think that should not be lost.
Yeah. I guess I never thought of it like that, but you're right. Wow. All right.
So
Harold, dropping the facts. Right. Okay. Well, we will see. We'll see how that goes. Harold, appreciate your time. Guys, we'll be back. We'll be either talking some national title football or, trust me, it's a ton to talk about in Big Ten hoops. For Harold Sheldon, I'm Rico Beard. Thanks for watching, liking, and subscribing to 5 Star Zone. We will be back next week.